The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor with a sound that cut through the music like a blade through silk. Everyone turned. Of course they did. That is what people do when something breaks in a room full of people pretending everything is perfect. I remember thinking, in that moment, that she looked smaller than usual. Marina stood there near the catering table, her black dress, simple, elegant, understated, now splattered with golden liquid. The stain spread across her hip like a wound opening. Her face had gone pale, not with anger, but with something worse. Humiliation. The kind that makes your throat close and your vision blur at the edges. "Oh my God," Deborah said, and even though her hand flew to her mouth in what should have been concern, I could see it. The glimmer. The satisfaction. "Marina, I am so sorry. These heels, you know? I didn't see you there." But she had seen her. We all knew she had seen her. The party had been flawless until that moment. The Hotel Fasano had outdone itself with the decorations. White orchids on every table. Golden lights woven through the ceiling like captured stars. Waiters moving through the crowd with trays of delicate things that cost more than most people earn in a week. It was the kind of Christmas party that made you feel important just by being invited. The kind where everyone wore their best face along with their best clothes. Marina had arrived alone, as she always did. I noticed because I noticed things about her. She had a way of moving through spaces that seemed both present and absent at the same time, as though she were participating in life from behind glass. She spoke when spoken to. She smiled when appropriate. She never caused problems. Perhaps that was why Deborah hated her. No, hate is not the right word. Deborah collected grievances the way some people collect shoes. Marina's crime was simple. She existed in the same office, breathed the same air, and somehow managed to do her work without seeking approval or attention. For someone like Deborah, whose entire identity depended on being seen, being envied, being the center of every room, Marina's quiet competence was an insult. "It's fine," Marina said, but her voice was barely a whisper. She bent down to pick up the broken glass, her hands shaking. "Don't touch that." Ricardo called out, the office manager, suddenly animated by the chance to manage something. "You'll cut yourself. Leave it for the staff." But Marina had already gathered the largest pieces into her palm. A thin line of blood appeared on her finger. She stared at it for a moment, as though surprised that she could bleed like everyone else. "Marina, seriously, just go clean yourself up," Deborah said, her voice dripping with false concern. "There's a restroom down the hall. We'll take care of this." Though we felt like a knife. It meant that Marina was now separate from the group. It meant she was the problem that needed to be managed, contained, removed from view. I watched Marina stand up, still holding the broken glass, her dress stained, her finger bleeding. She looked around the room at all of us, 50, maybe 60 people, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not anger. Something quieter. Something that looked almost like resignation. She walked toward the hallway without another word. Deborah waited exactly 3 seconds before leaning toward Camila and whispering something that made them both laugh. The sound was bright and cruel. Others nearby heard it and smiled, relieved that they were not the ones standing in champagne and shame. The music resumed. Conversations picked up again. Life continued as though nothing had happened. But I kept watching the hallway where Marina had disappeared. I do not know what made me follow her. Curiosity, perhaps. Or guilt, because I had done nothing when the glass fell. When Deborah smiled that smile. When everyone looked away. I set down my own glass. Carefully on a table, not on a floor, and walked down the corridor. The restroom door was closed, but I could hear water running. I stood there uncertain, my hand raised to knock. And then I heard something else. Crying. Not loud, wailing sobs. The kind of crying that people do when they are trying very hard not to cry. The kind that catches in your throat and makes your shoulders shake even though no sound comes out. I lowered my hand. Through the crack beneath the door, I could see her shadow. She was sitting on the floor. The water was still running in the sink, probably to mask the sound of her breaking apart in a hotel bathroom, while everyone else drank and laughed and celebrated the year's end. I should have knocked. I should have asked if she needed help. But I did not. Instead, I stood there and listened to Marina cry, and I wondered how many times she had done this before. How many times she had cleaned herself up, fixed her face, and walked back into rooms full of people who did not see her. The water stopped running. I walked quickly back to the party, my heart pounding for reasons I could not name. When Marina returned 15 minutes later, her dress was still stained, but her face was composed. Perfect even. She had reapplied her makeup with such precision that you would never know she had been crying unless you looked very closely at her eyes. They were slightly red, slightly swollen, but in the golden light of the ballroom, no one was looking that closely. No one ever looked that closely at Marina. She picked up a glass of water from a passing tray and stood near the window, alone, watching the city lights below. She did not rejoin the crowd. She did not leave early. She simply stood there, waiting for the night to end. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. This was normal for her. This was just another evening. Another humiliation absorbed, processed, survived. I wondered who she really was beneath that careful mask. I wondered what it cost her to keep standing there, glass after glass, party after party, year after year. I wondered if anyone would ever know. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the way December mornings do in Sao Paulo when the year is dying. The office felt different somehow, though nothing had physically changed. Same glass walls, same open floor plan, same coffee machine that only worked when you hit it in exactly the right spot. But the air was different. Heavier. Marina arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, the way she always did. I watched her walk to her desk in the corner. The one by the window that everyone said was a good spot but really was not, because the afternoon sun made it impossible to see your computer screen, and the air conditioning never quite reached that far. She set down her bag, turned on her computer, and began working. As if nothing had happened. Deborah arrived 20 minutes later, laughing loudly about something on her phone. Her heels clicking across the floor like tiny announcements of her presence. She glanced toward Marina's desk. Just a glance, quick, almost furtive. And then settled into her own workspace in the center of the room, where everyone could see her. No one mentioned the party. That is how these things work, is it not? The cruelty happens, everyone witnesses it, and then everyone agrees to pretend it never occurred. It makes life simpler, more comfortable. You can look at yourself in the mirror without guilt if you have collectively decided that nothing worth feeling guilty about ever took place. But I could not stop thinking about it. I watched Marina throughout the day, watched the way she answered emails with her usual precision, attended the morning meeting with her usual silence, ate her lunch alone at her desk while everyone else gathered in the break room. She did not seem angry. She did not seem hurt. She simply seemed absent. Present in body, absent in every way that mattered. Around 3 in the afternoon, Ricardo called a spontaneous meeting. We all gathered in the conference room, confused, because these meetings never happened on Mondays. Mondays were for recovering from the weekend, for easing back into work, not for urgent discussions. I have some news, Ricardo said, standing at the head of the table with the kind of false enthusiasm that managers use when they are about to deliver information they assume you will find exciting, but you almost certainly will not. Marina sat at the far end of the table, her hands folded, her expression neutral. As you all know, Ricardo continued, our division has been undergoing some restructuring. The company is shifting priorities, reallocating resources, that sort of thing. He said this the way people say things they have rehearsed. And as part of that process, we need to make some difficult decisions about staffing. My stomach dropped. I looked at Marina. She had not moved, had not even blinked. Marina, Ricardo said, and his voice softened in that dangerous way that people's voices soften right before they ruin your life. Could you stay after this meeting? I'd like to speak with you privately. The room went very quiet. Of course, Marina said. Her voice was steady, calm, as though he had asked her to review a spreadsheet, not summoned her to what everyone knew would be a firing. The meeting continued. Something about quarterly projections, something about team collaboration, but no one was listening. Everyone was thinking about Marina, sitting there at the end of the table, knowing what was coming, and giving them nothing. No tears. No anger. No reaction at all. When the meeting ended, everyone filed out quickly, eyes down, as though speed and averted gazes could absolve them of being witnesses. I hesitated at the door. Through the glass wall, I saw Ricardo lean forward, his hands clasped in false sympathy. I saw his mouth move. I saw Marina nod once, twice. And then I saw her stand up, shake his hand, and walk out. Just like that. No argument. No pleading. No scene. She returned to her desk, opened her drawer, and began removing her personal items. A coffee mug. A small plant that had somehow survived despite the afternoon sun. A framed photograph that I had never looked at closely enough to see who was in it. She placed everything into a cardboard box that Ricardo's assistant had quietly delivered. The box was small. Her entire presence in this office fit into a container the size of a microwave. I wanted to say something. I thought about walking over, offering sympathy, asking if she was all right. But what would I say? I am sorry they fired you after humiliating you at the Christmas party. I am sorry we all watched and did nothing. So I said nothing. Marina sealed the box with tape, picked it up, and walked toward the elevator. She did not say goodbye to anyone. She did not cry. She did not look back. She simply left. The office felt strange after she was gone. People returned to their work, but conversations were quieter. Deborah was on her phone, unusually silent. Even Ricardo had retreated to his office and closed the door. I kept staring at Marina's empty desk, at the space where she had sat for 3 years, and I realized that I knew almost nothing about her. I did not know where she lived. I did not know if she had family. I did not know what she did on weekends, what she cared about, what made her laugh. I had worked beside her for 3 years, and she was a stranger. Who was Marina, really? That evening, I did something I am not proud of. I searched for her online. It felt intrusive, voyeuristic, but I could not stop myself. I found almost nothing. No social media accounts. No photographs. No digital footprint at all except for a LinkedIn profile with minimal information. Her education, her work history, nothing personal. It was as though she had deliberately erased herself from the world. Or as though she was hiding. But hiding what? 3 weeks passed. The office filled Marina's empty desk with a new hire. A young man fresh out of university who laughed too loud and asked too many questions. He sat in her chair, used her filing cabinet, occupied her space as though she had never existed at all. That is how quickly we are all replaced. Life continued. Christmas came and went. The new year arrived with its usual promises and resolutions. Deborah got promoted to senior analyst. Ricardo sent out an email about exciting new directions and growth opportunities. No one mentioned Marina, but I could not stop thinking about her. Late at night, unable to sleep, I would remember the sound of her crying in that bathroom. I would remember the way she had stood by the window with champagne soaking through her dress, alone in a room full of people. I would remember the way she had packed her things into that small box and left without a word. And I would feel something like shame burning in my chest. I started noticing things I had never noticed before. The way Deborah spoke over people in meetings. The way Ricardo's praise always went to the loudest voices, never the most competent ones. The way cruelty in our office was disguised as humor, and exclusion was disguised as natural social dynamics. We were not bad people. That is what I kept telling myself. We were just ordinary people, doing ordinary things, making ordinary choices that sometimes hurt others. But is that not what bad people tell themselves? In mid-January, something strange happened. Our company received notice that we were being acquired. Not a merger, not a partnership, an acquisition. A larger firm had purchased our entire operation. The email came from someone in executive leadership whose name I did not recognize, using language that was simultaneously vague and ominous. Transition period. Integration process. Restructuring. Everyone panicked. Meetings multiplied. Rumors spread. People whispered about layoffs, about departments being eliminated, about the new owners wanting to streamline operations, which everyone knew meant firing half of us and making the other half do twice the work. Ricardo tried to maintain calm, but even he looked nervous. His usual confidence had been replaced with something that looked almost like fear. "We just need to show them how valuable we are," he said in one meeting. "We need to prove that this division is essential." Deborah immediately began positioning herself as indispensable, volunteering for extra projects, staying late, sending emails at midnight to demonstrate her dedication. Others followed suit. The office became a performance of productivity, everyone trying to outwork, outshine, outlast everyone else. I participated too. I am not proud of this. But fear makes people selfish. Weeks passed. The acquisition moved forward with bureaucratic slowness. Contracts were signed. Integration teams were formed. And still we knew nothing about our fate. Then in early February, we received a calendar invitation. All staff meeting with new leadership. Attendance mandatory. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock in the largest conference room. No additional information was provided. Just the time, the place, and that single ominous word, mandatory. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. When Tuesday morning arrived, the conference room filled quickly. Everyone was there, analysts, managers, support staff, even people from other floors who would also be affected by whatever was about to happen. We waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. A woman walked in. She was alone, carrying nothing but a leather portfolio. She wore a gray suit tailored so precisely it looked like armor. Her hair was pulled back severely. Her face was composed, professional, unreadable. She walked to the front of the room, set down her portfolio, and looked at us. The silence was absolute. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, the voice of someone who had spoken in rooms like this 1,000 times before. "My name is Marina Almeida dos Santos. I am the new director of operations." The room seemed to stop breathing. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. It was her. Marina. Our Marina. The woman we had watched cry at a Christmas party. The woman who had been fired 3 weeks later. The woman who had left with her belongings in a cardboard box. Except she was not our Marina anymore. She was someone else entirely. She stood there at the front of the room, perfectly composed, perfectly in control, and she looked at each of us, slowly, deliberately, as though memorizing every face. When her eyes reached mine, I felt something cold slide down my spine. She knew we were afraid. And she was not going to make this easy. Marina did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "Some of you know me," she said, and the understatement was deliberate, almost cruel. "I worked in this office until recently. I was dismissed as part of what was described to me as necessary restructuring." Her eyes found Ricardo. He had gone pale. "What you did not know, what I did not share because I saw no reason to, is that I have spent the past 8 years serving on the advisory board of Almeida Capital. My family's firm. The firm that has just acquired this company." The silence in the room was suffocating. Deborah's face had drained of all color. Her hands, usually so expressive, so confident, were gripping the edge of the table. "I took this position 3 years ago," Marina continued, her voice steady, clinical, "because I wanted to understand how this company operated from the inside. I wanted to see whether the culture matched the values that were advertised to investors, whether the leadership was competent, whether the divisions were worth keeping." She paused. "Let that sink in. I have spent 3 years watching, listening, taking notes, and I have reached my conclusions." Someone coughed. The sound was like a gunshot. Marina opened her portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. She did not look at it. She had memorized everything she needed to say. "This division has a toxicity problem," she said. "Not just poor management, though that is certainly present, but a cultural rot that starts at the leadership level and spreads downward. Employees are evaluated not on their competence but on their visibility. Cruelty is tolerated as long as it is performed by the right people. And anyone who does not participate in the performance is marginalized, undermined, and eventually removed." Her eyes swept across the room again. "I know this because I experienced it. I was the test case." Ricardo started to speak. "Marina, Director Almeida," she corrected him, and her voice was sharp enough to draw blood. "You will address me as Director Almeida, and you will not interrupt me again." He closed his mouth. "I have reviewed the circumstances of my termination," Marina said. "I was dismissed for alleged performance issues. However, my performance reviews over 3 years were consistently excellent. My work was always completed on time, and without error. I received no warnings, no opportunities to improve, no due process whatsoever. She looked directly at Ricardo. You fired me because it was easier than addressing the real problem. You fired me because someone in this room made it clear that my presence was inconvenient. And you chose not to ask why. You chose not to investigate. You chose not to protect an employee who was being systematically targeted. Ricardo's hands were shaking. That is a failure of leadership, Marina said. And it is grounds for termination. The room erupted in whispers. Someone gasped. Effective immediately, Marina continued. Ricardo Silva will be stepping down from his position as office manager. His termination package will be provided in accordance with labor law, nothing more. Human Resources will meet with him this afternoon to finalize the details. Ricardo stood up, his face red. You cannot do this. I have worked here for 12 years. I have. You have presided over a hostile work environment, Marina said. You have made decisions based on personal favoritism rather than merit. You have ignored complaints, dismissed concerns, and created a culture where employees feel unsafe reporting problems. Your departure is not negotiable. She looked at Deborah. Deborah Costa. Deborah flinched as though she had been slapped. You will also be leaving this company. Not because of your work. Though I have questions about how you managed to be promoted despite your tendency to delegate your responsibilities to others, but because of your behavior. Deborah opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I have documentation, Marina said, of 17 separate incidents over the past 2 years where you have bullied, undermined, or humiliated colleagues. I have written statements. I have emails. I have recordings from the Christmas party where you deliberately spilled champagne on me, and then laughed about it with others. My stomach turned. She had recordings. You made my life miserable because it entertained you, Marina said, and for the first time, a trace of emotion entered her voice. Not anger. Something colder. You made me cry in a bathroom while everyone else celebrated. And you did it because you could. Because no one stopped you. Deborah was crying now, but there was no sympathy in the room. Only silence. You are being terminated for cause, Marina said. You will receive no severance. You will be escorted from the building this afternoon. And if you attempt to claim wrongful termination, I will personally ensure that every company in this industry knows exactly why you were fired. Deborah stood up on shaking legs and stumbled toward the door. No one helped her. No one looked at her. The door closed behind her, and the room remained silent. Marina surveyed the rest of us. For everyone else, she said, there will be changes. Significant changes. Some of you will be asked to leave because your positions are redundant, or because your performance has been inadequate. Others will remain, but will be expected to meet higher standards. And some of you, those who have demonstrated actual competence and integrity, will be promoted. She closed her portfolio. I do not expect you to like me. I do not expect you to forgive me for what I allowed you to witness. But I expect you to do your jobs. I expect you to treat each other with basic human decency. And I expect you to understand that cruelty, in this office, ends today. She paused. Are there any questions? No one spoke. Then this meeting is adjourned. Human Resources will be reaching out to each of you individually over the next week. You are dismissed. People stood up slowly, uncertainly, and filed out of the room. I stayed seated. Marina was gathering her things when she noticed me. Yes, she said. I am sorry, I said. The words felt inadequate, pathetic. For not saying anything. For not helping. For watching you leave and doing nothing. She studied me for a long moment. Do you know why I did not tell anyone who I was? She asked. I shook my head. Because I needed to know the truth. If people had known I was Marina Almeida, from that Almeida family, they would have treated me differently. They would have performed for me. I would never have seen who they really were. She picked up her portfolio. You saw who I really was. I saw who all of you really were. And now we all have to live with that knowledge. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it is worth, she said without turning around. You were not the worst. You were just complicit. Most people are. Then she was gone. The office transformed over the following months. Ricardo's replacement was a woman in her 50s who had spent 20 years in human resources and had no patience for anything that even resembled workplace harassment. She instituted anonymous reporting systems, mandatory sensitivity training, and quarterly reviews that actually measured people's behavior alongside their productivity. Half the staff was let go. Some deserved it. Some did not. That is how these things go. Change is rarely fair, only necessary. New people arrived. The culture shifted. Slowly, painfully, the toxicity that had defined the office for so long began to dissolve. Marina, Director Almeida, was rarely there. She worked from the company's main headquarters, only visiting our floor for important meetings. When she did appear, people treated her with a mixture of respect and fear. They called her firm but fair. They said she had high standards. They said she did not tolerate excuses. They said she had saved the company. No one talked about the Christmas party anymore. It had become one of those things that everyone remembered but no one mentioned, like a scar that you learn to cover with clothing. I stayed. I do not know if I deserved to stay, but Marina did not fire me, so I stayed. My work improved. I found that when you are not constantly performing for approval, when you are not wasting energy on office politics and social posturing, you can actually focus on doing your job well. I was promoted 6 months later. A small promotion, nothing dramatic, but it was based on my work, not on who I had lunch with or how loud I was in meetings. It felt earned. That was new. One evening in August, I was working late, genuinely working late, not performing the appearance of dedication, when Marina appeared in the doorway of my office. I jumped. I had not heard her approach. "I am sorry," she said. "I did not mean to startle you." "It is all right," I said, though my heart was racing. "Can I help you with something?" She hesitated, which surprised me. I had never seen her hesitate. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Thank me?" "For staying in the conference room that day. For apologizing. For acknowledging what happened." I shook my head. "I do not deserve thanks. I should have done something at the party. I should have." "Most people would not have apologized at all," she interrupted. "Most people would have pretended they were not part of it. You acknowledged your complicity. That matters." She walked into my office and sat down in the chair across from my desk, which felt surreal. Marina Almeida dos Santos, sitting in my office, looking almost tired. "Can I ask you something?" I said. She nodded. "Why did you stay so long? You could have revealed who you were at any time. You could have stopped them." She was quiet for a moment. "Because I needed to know," she said finally. "My father built this company from nothing. He spent 40 years creating something he believed would outlast him, would help people, would mean something. And then he died, and I inherited it, and I discovered that parts of it had rotted from the inside." She looked at me. I could have just fired people from a distance, made decisions based on reports and numbers. But I would never have really known. I would never have felt what it was like to be powerless in a system that protects the wrong people. I would never have understood how cruelty operates when no one is watching. "But it hurt you," I said. "I saw you crying. I heard you." "Yes," she said simply. "It hurt me. But pain is information. And I needed that information to do this job correctly." We sat in silence for a moment. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Being Marina instead of Director Almeida?" She considered this. "No," she said. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that I had to experience what I experienced to learn what I learned. But I do not regret knowing the truth." She stood up. "The people who hurt me taught me something valuable," she said. "They taught me exactly what kind of leader I do not want to be. They taught me what happens when competent people stay silent. They taught me that cruelty flourishes when good people are merely complicit." She walked toward the door, then turned back. "You have potential," she said. "But potential means nothing if you waste it by being a bystander. Decide what kind of person you want to be. Then be that person, even when it is uncomfortable." "I will try," I said. "Trying is not enough. Do it." Then she left. I sat there for a long time after she was gone, staring at my computer screen, thinking about champagne on marble floors and cardboard boxes and bathroom doors, And all the moments when I had chosen silence over courage. I thought about Marina, crying alone while music played and people laughed. I thought about how easily cruelty can disguise itself as normalcy. And I thought about the fact that Marina had not sought revenge. She had sought justice. There is a difference. Revenge would have been personal, excessive, performative. Justice was simply removing the people who created harm and building something better in the space they left behind. She had not humiliated Deborah the way Deborah had humiliated her. She had not made a spectacle of Ricardo's termination. She had simply held them accountable, documented their failures, and removed them from positions where they could continue causing damage. That took more strength than revenge ever could. I finished my work that night with a strange feeling in my chest. Not quite redemption. I had not earned that yet, but something like possibility. The possibility that I could become someone who did not just witness cruelty, but confronted it. Someone who did not wait for permission to do the right thing. The office lights turned off automatically at 9 o'clock. I sat in the darkness for a moment, then gathered my things and left. The city was still alive outside, lights and movement, and the endless pulse of people living their lives. I walked to the subway thinking about Marina, about who she had been and who she had become, and about the fact that we never really know the people around us. We never know what they are carrying, what they have survived, what they are capable of. Marina taught us that. She taught us that quiet people are not weak people, that dignity is not the same as doormat, that sometimes the person you underestimate is the person who holds your future in her hands. They watched her cry at the Christmas party. No one knew who she really was. But now everyone knows. And the office, for better or worse, will never forget. I think about her sometimes, even now. I wonder if she ever thinks about that night, about the champagne glass breaking, about standing alone by the window. I wonder if she thinks it was worth it. The pain, the humiliation, the 3 years of pretending to be powerless. I think she would say yes. Because Marina did not just survive. She transformed suffering into change. She turned humiliation into accountability. She took the worst moments of her life and used them to build something better. That is not revenge. That is power. And as I descended into the subway, joining the flow of people heading home after long days and longer years, I made myself a promise. I would not be a bystander anymore. I would remember the sound of someone crying behind a closed door. And I would do something about it. The doors closed. The train moved forward. And I carried Marina's story with me into whatever came next.